round table. Vicky, I call it WPATH.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you? I thought they pronounced it differently.
No, that's what they call it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's the World Professional Association for Transgender Health.
Oh my.
And they call it WPATH for short.
Oh my. Okay. All right. Before I turn it over to Vicky, I just want to point out our sponsors. I don't know why I keep forgetting the sponsors. Full Armor .shop, fullarmor.shop, a Christian T-shirt company that allows you to witness before you even open your mouth or any room you walk into. Also, Prestige Kitchen and Bath. Prestige Kitchen and Bath. If you are in the Chicago area, please visit Prestige Kitchen and Bath. If you want to remodel kitchens or baths, they do great work. They're in Arlington Heights. As you can see, their phone number 847-348-0066. All right, Vicky. What's WPATH?
So WPATH, as we said, is an association for professionals, in quotation marks, kind of, regarding the transgender health arena. They are a 501c3, and it used to be known as the Harry Benjamin International Gender Dysphoria Association. Harry Benjamin worked with Alfred Kinsey, who we've talked about before.
Wonderful.
Terry knows a lot about Mr. Kinsey.
I used to. I've forgotten a lot, happily.
Yeah, exactly. So who are they? They are a group of activists and activist doctors primarily. They have self-appointed themselves the experts. They have an open membership. There are 2,700 members, according to Wikipedia, and they started in 1979. And interestingly enough, Wikipedia also says they're headquartered about 20 minutes west of here in East Dundee, Illinois.
Their headquarters?
Their headquarters. I mean, it's probably a small, I'm guessing they do a lot over Zoom with all their members, but yeah, that's where their headquarters supposedly are. So maybe we should go visit them.
Another wonderful thing that Chicago has produced.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Maybe we should go stand outside and pray.
Yes, good point.
Go to jail for that nowadays, Terry. That's fine. That's fine.
So WPATH has the reputation of being the leading scientific and medical organization devoted to transgender health care by those in the trans community. The American Medical Association, the Endocrine Society, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and thousands of doctors worldwide rely on them. And they consider them the leading global authority on gender medicine. Their current president is Dr. Bowers, who goes by Marcy, but is actually Mark.
Male.
Yeah, male.
He's a man.
Marcy was born Mark and was a married father of 3 when he decided to begin his transition into a woman. Dr. Bowers is also the surgeon who worked on Jazz Jennings from TV. The TV documentary series. And as we know,
No
Jazz...
connection there.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you mean, no connection?
You know, Jazz was the first child that they put on the puberty blockers. He out of Boston. This is kind of where this started. So this guy, Dr. Bowers, is the surgeon who
worked on this landmark.
Jazz, the pioneer for transgender.
Gotcha.
And as you know, it's been shown on the series, Jazz has suffered multiple complications, required multiple surgeries after the first one failed to produce the desired outcome. So not a good track record for Dr. Bowers. So these internal files were leaked. We don't know how many whistleblowers there were. There's one or more whistleblowers from inside WPATH, and they leaked these files to author and journalist Michael Schellenberger, who is known for his work on the Twitter files. He was one of the journalists that Elon Musk gave documents to when he acquired Twitter in late 2022. So I think that's maybe Michael believes that's how the whistleblowers had heard about him. He's also the author of multiple books. And so the leaked files include 170 pages of screenshots of posts from WPATH's internal messaging forum dating from 2021 to 2024, as well as a video of an internal panel discussion.
Let me ask this before you go further. What they were, if I'm understanding this correctly, they were like a think tank?
Yeah.
That was talking about...
They were a membership group of
group.
different doctors and psychiatrists and social
talking about
they talk to each other about, I have this patient, what do you guys think I should do? Or I have this kind of patient, I'm dealing with this situation.
So they're talking about their transgender patients.
Yes, they treat transgender patients.
And they were pro-print. I mean,
yes.
Obviously they were pro. Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So they are they're gender affirming, providing gender affirming care
Gotcha.
to the transgender community. And
which is an oxymoron in itself.
Right.
By gender affirming care.
Right. I know it.
Yeah. Opposite gender affirming care.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Oh, whatever. Okay. I'm sorry.
So why don't we go ahead and watch our first video? Gives us an overview.
But when you lift the hood and you look underneath what's going on, what you find is that these organizations are relying on this organization called the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. And when we look at those files, which includes both these written files but also videos, you see that the doctors, surgeons, therapists, and others that are involved in it, they admit that the parents and the kids do not understand that they are facing lifelong sterility as well as potentially a significant loss of sexual function. They don't understand these treatments, and that's called informed consent, which is right up there with do no harm. And so I think this is a really, a violation of medical ethics. They're also claiming that there's this evidence, but in fact, it's not scientific evidence. It's not evidence that's based on, properly controlled studies over time. The most shocking thing, one of the most shocking things, there's a lot of shocking things in there, is the ways in which they don't actually follow up with their patients. In other words, you'll see surgeons say, well, as far as we know, these things have gone well, or we don't know after 6 months. So you don't have a proper long-term study. And we do now know there's been several studies now debunking this claim, this false claim that somehow suicide risk is higher if you don't do these radical interventions. It appears as though quite the opposite is the case, and that there's a huge amount of regret. And much of what we see in the WPATH files are doctors and therapists dealing with detransitioners, dealing with people experiencing serious regret about the loss of their ability to have children or about their ability to achieve sexual function in the ways that most people are able to.
So that was Michael Schellenberger talking about the files. And he released these. He got these last year, but it took him many months to figure out what he was gonna do with them exactly and how to present them to the public.
Is he the whistleblower?
No. He's the guy the whistleblowers gave the files to.
Gotcha. He's
the author and investigative journalist. He's
Gotcha.
the Twitter files guy. So we don't know who the whistleblowers are. The files, like I said, were released to the public last month on March 5th. And what they did is, in addition to the 140 pages of screenshots, they also wrote a 70-page report. And everything's available at environmentalprogress.org. That's Michael Schellenberger's think tank, is Environmental Progress.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that WPATH, we're going to get into the files in a second, but first we're going to talk about their standards of care. So they are known for writing and releasing these standards of care. They do it about every 10 years. They update them. And the last time they updated them was in 2022. They came out with their version 8. And so the standards of care from WPATH is the most widespread protocol used by people working with the trans community. And their standards of care influence the policies and position statements of many major medical groups, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I already talked about these, the Endocrine Society, and as well as lawmakers, judges, public and private health insurance providers, and national health services around the world rely on WPATH.
So they're a big deal then.
Yeah.
And they're right here
in the trans community.
in Dundee, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe we should visit over
Yeah.
there.
So what was interesting with version 8 of the Standards of Care is a new chapter on eunuchs.
What?
That's how I remember. That's how I found out about this organization a while back. I actually looked at the
I don't
thing
understand.
Eunuchs.
They have determined that eunuch is now a separate gender identity.
What?
Yep. So chapter 9 is all about eunuchs. And one of their statements, so it says, well, here, I'll just read a little bit of it. Among the many people who benefit from gender affirming, in quotation marks, medical care, those who identify as eunuchs are among the least visible. The 8th version includes a discussion of eunuch individuals because of their unique presentation and their need for medically necessary care. Eunuchs are those assigned male at birth and wish to eliminate masculine physical features, masculine genitals, or genital functioning.
In other words, they're men who are
Castrated.
Yes, they want to be castrated men.
Is this a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing. According to these people,
Yeah.
I remember this now.
And this is like a growing thing? People want this?
Well, they wrote a whole chapter on it
Yeah,
in their
they
latest
included-
standards of care.
Says, as
Okay.
with other gender diverse individuals, eunuchs may also seek castration to better align their bodies with their gender identity. So one of their statements in their standards of care also states, we recommend healthcare professionals consider medical intervention, surgical intervention, or both for eunuch individuals when there is a high risk that withholding treatment will cause individuals harm through self-surgery, surgery by unqualified practitioners, or unsupervised use of medications. So we have a video on this too,
This is demonic.
from Jen Specht.
Here we go.
Get into the actual details of what's going on, you realize this is an organization, WPATH, and they published their standards of care. They had 120 authors. There was an awful lot of work went into it, many years between the last standards of care and this standards of care, and yet still, after all that work with all those authors, they chose to write a chapter on eunuchs. They chose to write a chapter on non-binary identified people. They chose not to write a chapter on detransitioners. So they have discredited themselves. If they could have been turned around, they would have been turned around by now. There's enough voices, there's been enough experts, there's been enough people saying, actually the evidence is flawed. Actually there's a very low quality evidence base. Actually this study doesn't really withstand any kind of penetration. We've said it all. We've said it a million different times. People have said it politely. People have said it very impolitely. People have said it with tears. People have said it gently and quietly to their friends. And it's been a wall of resistance. And then when you get into the...
Yeah. So I also watched a video where they were doing a presentation about this chapter, about the eunuchs. And one commenter under the video, which I agree with, said the weirdest part was that they talked about how many had been threatened as children with castration.
What do you mean?
So they were talking about
threatening
eunuchs.
kids with
and they were talking about the profile of some of these folks, and a lot of these folks had been threatened. These men had been threatened with castration as children.
Child abuse.
Wait, why? How could
abuse.
you? I don't want to say legally. Under what circumstances could you threaten a child with castration?
Yeah, I know. So these men, but when they were little, were abused and threatened by whoever. I don't know who threatens children with castration.
That's what I'm saying. Under
but
what circumstance can you even do that?
it's crazy people, abusive
Parents are threatening their kids?
Crazy parents, crazy caretakers.
You can't
So-
threaten.
Well,
So hold on.
Go ahead.
What do you mean? People
can't do that.
People
Parents
threaten all
abuse
sorts of things.
children all the time. I mean, there are parents who abuse children, Pastor James.
So you mean parents castrating kids at home?
Or just threatening it.
Just
Threatening it.
to do
Threatening it. You know, like.
Okay.
So this commenter said he found it, the weirdest part was that they don't talk of that trauma and how a therapist might help that person get over that trauma that they were threatened that way as a child. They seem to head straight to let's make that childhood threat a reality.
Who does that? Doctors, psychiatrists?
WPATH.
They're saying,
People.
okay, you want to be castrated.
No.
We're going to help you do it. And they're saying one of the reasons these men may want this is because they're suffering from trauma, from past trauma as children, that they were threatened with this. So now, instead of addressing that trauma, WPATH is saying, okay, here's how to, here's
Follow
how to
through
go
with it and
about
castrate them.
Yeah. And
Who
make
are they
that part a
advising? They're
reality.
advising psychiatrists and psychologists.
And surgeons.
This really
Yeah.
in America,
Yes.
in the United States of America.
Well, they're based here. Yes, the majority of their membership are U.S. About
That
what I
doesn't
read
even
is
sound
75% of the membership is U.S.
That doesn't even sound legal.
To castrate
this
people.
is-
I mean, they've been chemically castrating children. So I know it doesn't. It's so crazy, but it's going to get crazier. So now we're going to actually. So we're moving on from the standards of care to the files. So we're going to see how these internal files prove that the practice of transgender medicine is neither scientific nor advocating for ethical medical care. I know none of this is a surprise to us because we've been digging into this for years and we've seen year after year things getting worse and worse. But what's interesting about this is, from what I didn't know much about Michael Schellenberger, but when I looked into him, he was resisting looking at any of this until about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So he's kind of new to this, where we've been in this for many years. So that's the interesting part about this, is now people like him are finally looking at it, and now this is out there. So hopefully more people in the center, or maybe center left, or the left even, will wake up and realize we're not making any of this up. This is from their own mouths. You will hear from their own mouths what they are doing. So, which brings us to our next video. Is this is Michael again, and then we're going to go into the WPATH leaked video.
We believe the files show that what is called gender medicine is neither science nor medicine. The experiments are not randomized, double-blind, or controlled. And it's not medicine, since the first rule is to do no harm, and that requires, first and foremost, informed consent.
I think the thing you have to remember about kids is that we're often explaining these sorts of things to people who haven't even had biology in high school yet, and I know I've heard others in this kind of a setting say, well, we think adults are like really slick biologically, but in fact, lots of people have very little medical understanding of stuff like that. We just, medical professionals and mental health professionals, take for granted. But I don't know still what to do for the 14-year-olds. The parents have it on their minds, but the 14-year-olds, it's like talking with diabetic complications with a 14-year-old. They don't care. They're not going to die. They're going to live forever, right? So I think when we're doing informed consent, I know that that's still a big lacuna.
I just wanted to piggyback on all of the importance that comes up with the informed consent issues. I often see people who, because there's such a backlog of therapists to do some of the mental health therapeutic support, I often see people who have already engaged in some sort of, and this is again with youth, who've already engaged in some sort of medical intervention. And so one of the things I do is I'm sitting with the youth and their parents, and I say, oh, well, so tell me more about what you know about that medical intervention. And kind of like what Dan was saying, children and young adolescents, we wouldn't really expect them. It's kind of it's out of their developmental range sometimes to understand the extent to which some of these medical interventions are impacting them.
We do it. We try to talk about it, but most of the kids are nowhere in any kind of a brain space to really, really, really talk about it in a serious way. That's always bothered me, but we still want the kids to be happier in the moment, right?
And I appreciate that much less with a 9, 10, or 11-year-old who's starting puberty suppression, and like Ren said, if they continue on, then and I mean, it's like developmentally not in their space to be able to have to think about that, and it shouldn't be, right? And so I think it is a real growing edge in our field to kind of figure out how we can approach that. I'm definitely a little stumped on it. I try to kind of do whatever I can to help them understand best I can. But what really disturbs me is when the parents can't tell me what they need to know about a medical intervention that apparently they signed off for.
Okay, I understand. It took me a while to wrap my head around what we're doing here. We are showing the depravity of human beings at its lowest. Mm-hmm. And the reason why this is important for Christians to know is to look at the depth of the evil that's happening in the realm of transgenderism. These are, quote unquote, the best minds that are pro-LGBTQ, and these people are evil. They're flat out evil. They're talking amongst themselves. And for that the last person that spoke, the thing that bothers me is when a parent can't even explain what they signed off on. Then why the heck did you do it?
Right.
I mean,
informed consent is...
The parents are ignorant. First of all, you got an ignorant parent that would even do... First of all, the depravity of a parent to allow their child to go through it is off the wall. But these are quote unquote professionals. We're getting a look behind the curtain of the evil. And we're showing these people, they're not, how can I say it? They're not naive innocence. These people are just flat out evil. And you're listening to the evil conversation amongst the lieutenants of Satan. That's what you're doing.
But the interesting thing, I think, is that they clearly, they're troubled. Some of them are troubled by the fact that
really? You think so?
Yeah, I do. I think,
like you said, not enough to stop.
Not troubled enough to stop, no. But they still, in general, support the whole project. You understand?
Yeah, I think they think the end justifies the means to them.
What ends?
Well, as the guy said, he wants to be happier in the moment. Is that the craziest thing? He said, we want them to be happier in the moment, even though they can't consent to what is happening to them, and they have no idea what the long-term effects are going to be. Right. We want them to be happier in the moment.
It's a study in human nature, truly.
No, you're looking at the Nuremberg trials. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at the depravity of humanity.
Yes, that's what I mean.
On display.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I mean, imagine if all parents parented their children according to that mantra. Well, as long as they're happy in the moment.
Right. Oh my
Can
goodness.
you imagine?
It doesn't even.
I get a parent giving a kid candy because you can't sleep.
Well, that's not going to help them sleep.
Give a little. I'm saying, man, in the middle of the day, whatever.
Yeah.
Just caving. Not this. You know.
No, although I have listened to some of these testimonies, and I mean there are parents who have been told, well, and this is how they say it: would you rather have a dead daughter or a live son?
That's a stupid argument.
They're gaslighting the parents.
I've heard
They're
that's
gaslighting
stupid.
them.
That's just stupid.
And they're also taking kids away from parents.
No, that's when we're gonna have a fight. Yeah.
Yeah, and then sometimes you have a divorce situation where one parent wants one thing, one parent, and it's just.
I got that, Terry. I understand those circumstances in which. Well, yeah, but anyway, I shouldn't say anymore because I'm gonna start talking about firearms. But go ahead.
Okay, yeah, let's move on. So Mia Hughes is Michael Schellenberger's counterpart, and she's the one who wrote the 70-page report. And so we have our next video with Mia, and talking about, again, the lack of ability to consent, and this is regarding the issue of sterility.
Mia Hughes is the author of the report. She takes issue with the way this endocrinologist describes fertility preservation for young girls.
We've got a pediatric endocrinologist who very clearly knows that these young people, these adolescents, cannot understand lifelong sterility. He says, when he's talking about fertility preservation with a 13-year-old, it's like talking to a blank wall.
It's always a good theory that you talk about fertility preservation with a 14-year-old, but I know I'm talking to a blank wall. And the same would happen for a cisgender kid, right? They'd be like, ew, kids, babies, gross.
He says, they'll say, ooh, baby's gross, which is, of course, a perfectly natural teenage reaction. I was once a 13-year-old girl. That would have been my reaction. I'm now in my 40s. I have 3 children, and they are my entire life because I was allowed to grow and mature and change. And then this doctor also sees that there's regret because he sees the adolescents when they come back in their 20s and they've met someone and they want to settle down, and he says to them,
I think now that I follow a lot of kids into their mid-20s, I'm always like, oh, the dog isn't doing it for you, right? Yeah, they're like, no, I just found this, wonderful partner, and now we're kids, and da-da-da. So I think, it doesn't surprise me.
I think.
So
it doesn't surprise
that
him.
guy that was talking, the dog isn't doing it for you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a transgender? He's a doctor that helps people transgender?
Yes, that's Dr. Daniel Metzger.
Okay, see.
Mm-hmm.
See, I shouldn't
And he says it doesn't surprise him that they come back in their 20s.
That's my point. That's evil.
And he's still doing
I
it.
shouldn't say nothing.
Yes,
I
it
can't.
is
I
evil.
shouldn't say
You're
anything.
right, but it's
no.
just... Wait, what do you mean no? I just agreed with you.
I know.
Pastor James. I agreed with you.
I know
it
you
is
did.
evil.
I know you did, but you don't understand what I'm saying. To a dad, you would have to kill him before you chop up on my kids. I'm not gonna stand by. I'm not talking. I'm not discussing. I'm not even going to court. I got to be in jail or incapacitated. I'm not gonna sit by and let you cut on my kids.
Okay, but now we're talking about the people who are actually doing the cutting, like this dude.
Yeah, you don't understand.
Just up there.
I
mean, you're talking about the parents.
I'm talking about the parents doing something to that man that was on that video. But anyway.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
So hopefully with these files, more people will be enraged like you are. Not to the point of violence, of course. We don't want violence here.
We don't.
Of course not.
You should protect your kids.
But yes, there are so many people who have told us that this is not happening. This is not happening. And well, guess what? Now there's irrefutable proof because that this is happening. And they were talking about 9, 10, 11-year-olds in that other video.
Yes, you're right.
I mean,
well, yeah, if you're talking about puberty blockers, that's what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? And I've said this even to my own kids so many times. You cannot convince somebody of something they don't want to know. You can't.
True.
There's none so blind as one who will not see.
I got you.
And there's so much of that. And I wonder, I'm just looking around as an aside, there's so much more now, or has it always been this way? I always wonder that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't like it close. Can you make it hotter?
Go ahead.
So, the concept of the fact that so many young people are being sterilized because they don't understand, their parents either don't understand or don't care enough to stop it, or are being gaslit to the extent where, yes, they believe a live, child is better than a dead one because they're buying the lies that, about suicide, which has been come out as well, that there is no proof, that doing these procedures is decreasing the suicide rate.
And of course, that's also a thought that they put in all these kids' minds.
Right.
I mean, the public schools make a point of it. That may not be their intent, but they do. Because they talk about suicide. Have you ever been suicidal? And do these surveys, and which, if you're a kid, you don't know much about the world. You haven't been around very long. Well, is it normal to feel suicidal? I mean, it's just insidious. It's coming at kids from so many different directions.
But it's still the parents' fault. It's still the parents'
It's
fault.
a lot of the parents' fault.
Yeah, they're responsible, largely. Yeah,
and a lot of the reason these kids, not just gender confused kids, but a lot of kids are depressed and anxious is because there's so much focus on their feelings. Well, if you focus on your feelings 24 hours a day, of course you're going to be more depressed.
If you focus on yourself 24 hours a day, you're going to be depressed.
Right. So moving on, we're going to. Why don't we put up our first image, Pastor James? We're going to talk about. We're going to show some screenshots here for those watching. Some of these screenshots from the internal communication form that they have. And they talk about how a lot of their patients have other disorders. Of course they do. And how it's obvious that they're not being addressed. This one says, trauma is common among trans clients. Nonetheless, I was surprised to find that several of my clients met criteria for dissociative disorders. I was wondering if other people have noticed, so they're asking their colleagues if they've noticed incidents. And dissociative identity disorder among their trans clients, and whether there's been any difficulty with the system agreeing to transitioning medically, especially given that not all the alters have the same gender identity. So they're talking.
Explain that.
So dissociative identity disorder used to be called multiple personality disorder.
Yep, I understand.
So they're talking about the alters being the different personalities.
Oh, you mean alters mean alternative?
The other personalities.
Yes, the alters. The alter. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. I thought you meant like an altar where you sacrifice.
No.
I got you.
Alters could be the
alternative.
The alternative personalities.
Yeah.
So amputating genitalia and giving people opposite, all these hormones, that is supposed to cure the multiple personalities. Is that what we're saying now?
Say that one more time.
So having your genitalia amputated
is supposed to help somehow
cure multiple personality disorders, essentially. Right?
That's, I guess, what they're thinking. This other person.
You know what? But the thing is, I'm sure that the people with the disorder have been convinced that yes, that is the answer.
Right. Oh yeah. They've probably been told that this will solve your problems.
And yes, and apparently
instead of addressing the trauma that caused the disorder in the first place.
And WPATH and all these doctors and social workers and they're just going along with that.
Yep.
You look like you're thinking very hard.
Yeah, I don't see where. Let's see.
This other person chimes in, says, I have noted a high incidence of dissociative disorders amongst the community throughout both my interactions as a social service worker and personal connections.
So the problem is getting consent from multiple personalities.
Yep.
That's the issue we're talking about. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Right. Trying to get consent with multiple. Okay.
It says we worked on all alters giving consent to hormone therapy before it was started. They had alters who were both male and female. Oh, sorry. We can move on.
Okay.
I'm on.
That's the approach.
The second one?
Actually, I moved on to 3A.
Wow. That's the approach of these mental health professionals.
Yep.
To get consent from each multiple personality.
Yep. If you do not get consent from all alters, you have not really received consent.
Oh, my gosh.
And you may be open to being sued later. Which...
This is the third one, Vicky?
3A. Now I'll go... Are you on 3?
Yeah, I'm on 3A. Oh, 3A, that's the fourth one?
Yeah, that one.
Gotcha.
So
I don't know
this
who's
is
more
just
insane.
Yeah, I don't either.
You don't
I
know.
don't either.
I know. The crazy one that think that they smart.
Yes. This now, if we want to go to JPEG 3, Pastor James.
Sent to HBO. They had alters who were both.
I just love that they put all of this in writing, and I love that there were people on the inside willing to be whistleblowers. They are heroes.
Would be affected by it. So you got to talk to all
because this is now irrefutable.
Ethically, I don't know about that irrefutable, Vicky. Because
you don't know.
You're assuming that. Okay.
They're
if you don't know the difference between a man and a woman, and you can't define a woman, none of this.
But the people in the mushy middle I'm talking about, it should be able to convince them.
Think about this.
That
who in the heck is in the mushy middle now?
Lots of people still.
Yes, because most people don't think deeply.
Okay.
I've been trying to get
That's the bottom
signatures
line.
on that petition. There's still a lot of mushy middle out there.
Vicky, if you don't know the difference between a man and a woman, you're not in the mushy middle. You're off on La La Land. If you really
Well,
think
the mushy
that
middle
not
are the people who've been putting their heads in the sand and refusing to even think about it because they are claiming it's being exaggerated.
Okay.
Well, this is proof. There's no exaggeration.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
So we're on 3?
Yeah, let's go to 3. Where this person, this WPATH professional says, I have felt good about calling it complicated PTSD. So she feels good, and she's just going to make it up as she goes along. Since trauma, blah, 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 blah. She said, I would love to talk more offline as somehow I have 12 clients with dissociative identity disorder. And it seems there is a significant and important connection with gender diversity that I am now trying to screen for before starting hormones. Now. It's like they're just making it up as they go along.
So you're treating and you're cutting body parts off of people who have multiple personalities, and now you're starting to find out after the fact.
That maybe
so the way
maybe
you solve it,
maybe you should screen them first.
Yeah, so the way you solve it, you start screening them for it. Come on, whatever.
Says, I have 2 such folks who, after several years on hormones, felt their decision to start hormones was colored by trauma, you think? And dissociative identity disorder. And now, after more therapy and understanding, wish they had dug deeper before starting hormones.
Because they didn't know who was talking for them at the time. Okay, this is. I've worked with multiple personalities.
Yeah.
This is demonic. A lot of it's demonic. I'm not gonna say every last one of them is demonic, but a lot of them demonic. When you deal with people to the point where personalities are vastly different with different voices coming out of the same person, that's some demonic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
got to get the consent of the demons.
Yeah.
My gosh, that's not funny, but
yeah,
it's
but that's way over people's. I don't know. You know what, Vicky? If you can look at this and you still somewhat in the middle on this issue, I'm not talking about.
Well, that's what I'm
everything.
saying. If people actually look at this, if they actually, and this is available for everybody. It's they released everything. They took out some people's names. You know, that they couldn't get in contact with or whatnot.
85% won't even look at it, Vicky.
But
they don't want to deal with it.
Right.
They don't want to know the truth.
All right. So why don't we look at our next video, video 5.
Video 5. Here we go.
In one internal conversation, you see a doctor responding to a nurse practitioner who is struggling with how to handle a patient with PTSD, major depressive disorder, observed dissociations, and schizoid typical traits who wishes to go on hormone therapy. The doctor writes, I'm missing why you are perplexed. The mere presence of psychiatric illness should not block a person's ability to start hormones.
We're seeing discussions of giving a 10-year-old girl puberty blockers, giving treatments to 13-year-old with developmental delays. There's a case of a person with schizophrenia who's also homeless. They're talking about performing genital surgeries on this person.
All right, there's no middle. There's no middle on these issues.
I know.
I mean, if you can't navigate yourself Yeah. Yeah, there's no middle on this stuff.
So, yeah, so that's some really disturbing, dark stuff.
Would you consider changing the title once we're done to the evil of transgenderism, or evil revealed, or the cult of transgenderism revealed? So, something along those lines.
Something
'Cause when you say
stronger.
WPATH, no one knows.
No one
I didn't
knows
know
what
what that
that
was.
is. Okay,
I
yeah,
had
we can
no idea
certainly-
what that was.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is just, there's no middle ground.
Right.
There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground.
So that's the psychological part of it. And now we're going to move into...
Just because you're crazy shouldn't stop you from hormones. That's basically what they're saying.
Or amputating body parts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Someone's not in their right mind.
How
So
do you
what?
give informed
Cut
consent?
away.
Right.
Cut away. They're struggling with their mental reality. That's okay. Cut away.
That'll help.
Yeah. It's just, there's no middle. There's no middle. There's no middle. There's no middle.
So now moving on, we're going to talk about some other screenshots where they talk about cancer. Among a lot of one of the messages dated December 1st, 2021 says, "Hi colleagues, wondering if anybody else has had to navigate the development of hepatic adenomas in a young person treated with testosterone and or oral contraceptives. Our team has a 16-year-old patient who was on something for several years for menstrual suppression and who has been on testosterone for slightly over 1 year. Patient found to have 2 liver masses. The oncologist and surgeon both have indicated that the likely offending agents are the hormones. And have recommended the treatment ceases at this time. We are prepared to support the patient in any way we can, including top surgery when medically stable. However, we are wondering if anyone else has experience with this situation." So the hormones cause liver tumors, but we're not gonna think, we're still
Rethink
gonna
this
we're not
project.
gonna we're still gonna consider the top surgery when they feel better.
I remember talking to the school board about this. This is a giant experiment on kids.
Yep.
A giant. And
And
it
how
didn't
effective
make-
was it,
A
Terry?
giant
not
unregulated
effective
Zero.
at all.
giant unregulated experiment. Yep, you
We
did
have
say that.
no idea what this is going to do after 10, 20, 30, 40 years. No idea.
When they do commercials on TV about a new drug, half the commercial is warning them what's going to happen
Right.
to you on the side effect. May cause blindness, even death. You may lose your leg, you may lose your eye, and you may be dumbfounded, may get stroke and all that stuff. But that's okay, take our drug anyway.
Yeah.
What the heck would I want to take a drug like that for anyway?
Pastor
So-
James, I forgot to ask you to put on the cancer JPEG so folks can see with their own eyes what I just read. That,
Yeah, I was
where-
trying to follow along. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
What you were-
it's-
what you
it's
were
this
reading.
one.
It's the one.
Number 5.
It's the JPEG is titled Cancer.
Is that number 5? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's the last one. Yep.
Yeah, I did it. That's what I'm saying. But I was trying to follow along.
That's not it, though. The one that's up there right now.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. So yeah, that's what I was looking for. I was trying to find what you were reading. Oh, you know what? Did I do the wrong thing? No, this is it.
All right. While you look for that, I'll
Go
keep
ahead.
talking. And then in February of 2022, somebody responds and says, "I have one transition friend / colleague who, after about 8 to 10 years of testosterone, developed hepatocarcinomas, which is malignant liver cancer. To the best of my knowledge, it was linked to his hormonal treatment. He was in his midlife. Unfortunately, I don't have much more detail since it was so advanced that he opted for palliative care and died a couple of months after."
Yeah, that is the one labeled cancer, Vicky.
Oh, sorry then.
Yes,
okay.
probably.
Yes, you're right. That is the one. You're right. My bad. The other one was an extra I only had in our notes. But yeah, so folks can see the one I just read. So a potential link between testosterone, which regulates pubic development and which biological males produce naturally more than females, link between that and liver cancer has been noted before. And a 2020 paper published in The Lancet detailed one case in which a 17-year-old teenage girl developed liver tumors after taking testosterone. The patient was advised to stop taking, and the study said the relationship between the hormone and the tumor growth was unknown, probably because they didn't follow up. And then another study found cases in which transgender individuals receiving hormone therapies developed liver tumors, but said the results were not sufficient to conclude that there was an association. Maybe they need to do more studies, huh?
No,
but they're not going to.
No.
Not for things they don't want to find out.
Right.
They never do.
Exactly.
No.
And these hormone therapies have also been linked to other forms of cancer, though, of course, research has been inconclusive, and I'm sure will continue to be.
To be inconclusive, yes.
No. And a 2019 study of transgender adults in Amsterdam found there was an increased risk of breast cancer in men who try to transition to be women who had received hormone therapy compared to biological men. All right. So it's not good. Things are not good. Now we're going to talk about what is going on in Europe and why is America so far behind catching up on the evil that is occurring. So this is our next video.
Well, yeah, and I think you're pointing to something really interesting, which is that the conversation is in a completely different place in Europe. The progressive side of things, the liberal side of things, is raising really serious concerns about this. In Britain, the National Health Service basically banned puberty blockers in all of the government, in the NHS hospitals. The Times of London, which is the New York Times of Britain, came out for a full ban on puberty blockers on children. They called it quack medicine, which is very similar to my reaction when you read this. It feels like witchcraft when they're just basically imagining that they're going to rearrange people's bodies to align with some sort of gendered soul or some sort of gendered essence. There's no science for that. It's really much more akin to quack medicine or pseudoscience or witchcraft than anything approaching science-based medicine. So yeah, I think that one of the issues, the United States is we have a hyper-capitalist healthcare system. In Europe, they tend to be centralized, socialized systems where the government has a lot larger role. And so when the government makes a particular decision, as in Britain, that's basically the decision for the whole country. Whereas in the United States, obviously there's 50 states, different states are pursuing different things. And we've seen the medical associations in the United States really get bullied by trans activists into adopting these entirely unproven pseudoscientific methods, rather than taking a minute and considering, hey, maybe messing with the puberty of teenagers is not the best way to go.
Why do you think?
So yeah, Europe's handling this very differently than we are here. And like I said, the WPATH membership is majority U.S., so that's part of the problem.
I connected with a childhood friend yesterday. You know, we chat every once in a while. In the conversation, he's like, James, you warned me about the Democrats 30 years ago. And so he knows the Democrats are what not evil. 20 years ago, he's been talking to his family and stuff. He asked me a question yesterday. He says, do you think we can come back from where we are? He said, I don't think so. I think we're too far gone. For people to swallow what they're swallowing. And he's not he doesn't claim Christ. He's conservative now. He's reformed politically. But he's like, but this whole transgender and everything, he's like, I think we're too far gone. I think people are too stupid. I
just think, like I said before, people are unwilling to think deeply about much of anything, and we have so many distractions. Yes, that's what I'm saying. That is the vast majority of people, and we have so much distraction in our life now that I don't see that changing.
No.
Yep.
Unless something, until the bottom drops out, maybe.
Yep.
Then it'll change
Until
for a
it gets
few,
to their
maybe.
doorstep.
Oftentimes I wonder, I've come to the conclusion, when Joshua was going to the land of Canaan, God doesn't say reform them. I think they were past the point of reform.
Mm-hmm.
The only remedy at that point was to clean slate.
Yeah, well,
Clean slate.
God started over more than once.
But
With the flood,
For
too.
the people, yes. Exactly, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole execution of the land of Canaan, it was just, the society had become so corrupt, you're not going to...
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing when people, look at stuff and think, and you can have debate and discussion.
Yeah.
Well, we can't even get to the
No.
debate and the discussion
And
because
that's
there's
when
no
it's-
thinking
That's
going
when it's
on.
done. When you refuse to think,
Right.
when a society refuses to think, I think it's done.
Or when they twist what you're saying and you can't even have an honest discussion because they are
Right.
lying about what you say and do.
The
Yeah.
only way MSNBC and all those news stations can do that is because the populace is not willing to think
Right.
it through. They couldn't do this 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
They couldn't.
No.
But when you dumb down the public school system and you
Right.
make it all about feelings,
Right.
now they can do it.
Yep.
Now they can do it.
So we do want to end on a little bit of a high note, though. So, like I said a little bit ago, Michael Schellenberger himself admitted that he resisted looking at this evil for years and thought it was being overblown. And he was interviewed a couple of weeks ago by Dr. Jordan Peterson, and Dr. Peterson asked him what made him finally stop resisting.
Well, let's close this with this. So one of the things we talked about right at the beginning was your initial resistance to even delve into this domain. And you said why. It's like, who wants to look at that? And the answer is no one, but you did. So let's ask two questions then. Why did you? Like, what drove you to do that and to overcome your resistance? And what has been the consequence for you? Right? Because that's the end of the story. You looked on the snake that no one wants to look at, and it's certainly poisonous. So the question is, why? What drove you to do that? What voice did you hearken to that invited you on that adventure, let's say? And then what's the consequence for you of doing this?
It's such a great question, Jordan. I mean, it's so funny because when you say I had this call to do something on it that I refused. I mean, I saw it happening and I refused the call. And then, of course, it was, in the classic hero's journey narrative, I finally felt compelled because this person or persons who gave me the files, I knew that nobody else would be able to bring them into the world in the way that we could do it. You may know that or I didn't write, I had my colleagues wrote a 70-page report to accompany the files. We had attempted to do it journalistically. It was too much, too complex. So we spent 8 months working on this report. The consequences, I'm afraid that they're only starting. I mean, I've been taking on the CIA, the FBI, been writing about Jeffrey Epstein. None of it worries me. None of that scared me. These people, and look, I'm not so scared of them, but I think the people that are involved in this, which is frankly a cult, a child sacrifice and castration cult, if we're just being perfectly honest, like that's what, as an objective description of it, they're very dangerous. They're violent. They're aggressive. Right. They attack. So I've taken my own personal security. I won't say what, but I'm taking measures to protect my personal security at this point.
Do you regret it?
Not for a minute. No,
Why not?
Of course not.
Why not? Because that's surprising. Like, you just said there's a most dangerous opponent that you've probably faced, and I believe that, by the way. I believe that's to be the case, yes. And a very well-organized one, too. The only YouTube videos I've had taken down have been the ones that touched on the trans issue.
This.
Right.
Well, we'll see if this one, we'll see what happens with this one.
Yeah, exactly. We will see. We will see. Okay, so you're putting yourself in danger, so why don't you regret it?
Well, it comes back to this thing we were just talking about, right? It's like if you're not going to take some amount, and I don't want to overstate it either, but if you're not going to be willing to take on some amount of sacrifice on something like this, then what good are you? Like,
Yeah,
what is the
that's-
point?
that's
You're not
right,
really a
that's right.
man, right?
That's
You're not
right.
really a father.
Yes, that's
You're just
right.
not a, like, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I had said no to this. And
You're the slave of psychopaths. That's what you are.
that's right.
That's
yeah,
right.
I would be
that's
right.
Voiceless, braying slave of psychopaths.
That's right.
Right. That's exactly
And now I can be in a
right.
position where, like, we're not going to be afraid of them. We're going to overcome them. And we're going to figure out how to do that. I do have faith. I think I do tend towards optimism. But I think this part, Jordan, this is such a helpful conversation, because I do think being able to describe what's happening in very specific psychological terms, I think is one of the keys to.
So Terry, when he said you're not a man, you
Thank you.
Why did that strike such a nerve?
Because that's why all these things are happening. Because we have men who aren't men anymore. They don't have any guts. They don't have any purpose, or they don't know their purpose. Maybe I'll say that. They can't distinguish between what's important and what isn't.
Right.
They don't have integrity. They're just shallow shadows of men.
You could say that to, I would say, men who claim to be Christians, but to a man who doesn't, I mean, really, what he doesn't know his purpose, right? If you're not going to worship Christ, you don't know your purpose.
I agree, but to a certain extent. But like the ancient Romans, maybe it's a cultural thing too. They had a code of honor. They had some kind of code of honor, where a man had a clear vision,
Horus honorarium. Of course, I forget the name of it. Yeah.
And courage was part of it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Courage. Nobody wanted to be a coward.
No,
That
Terry,
was just worse than
growing up on the playground in second grade. When you call someone a coward, you had to be ready to fight.
Well, I don't think it's that way. We don't even use that language anymore. I just think men have been emasculated.
You say men, and I agree.
In general.
I agree. Men too. But how many people? Let me take it to this level. Here's what he's saying, and here's what I was saying. We're saying what's going on. Most people are cowards. Let's just be honest. Most people are cowards, men and women, but particularly men. You can't be. Men are cowards. How many people, just in our small area of the world, how many people it has been shown or revealed to them the evil going on in schools? I'm talking about in church now. I'm not talking about the people who claim to be Christ, the evil going on in schools, the evil going on even in churches, yet people continue to cover their eyes, cover their ears, because they don't want to deal with it. How many people have come up to our school task force and say, boy, the stuff that's going on, how come my church isn't doing anything? And still go to the church that refuses to do anything? How many?
Most.
Mm-hmm. And so I think the days, and I remember, Vicky, one of the things that was I don't want to say life-changing, I was ignorant, and I told you, I said, Vicky, people aren't speaking up at the school boards because they don't know. They don't know. And shortly after that, within a year, I made sure that they knew. And what did that change? Nothing. They still didn't go. The problem wasn't that they didn't know. They were cowards. And most people, put it this way, most people who claim to be Christians who don't want to deal with what their leaderships are actually doing or what their leadership is not doing, they're cowards. And I tell people this over and over and over again in Revelation, before you get to the murderers, talk about people going to the lake of fire, before you get to the murderers, adulterers, and the liars, what leads that list? Cowards. Mm-hmm. Cowards.
But I think it's bad for both sexes, but I think it's especially
for
bad
men.
Thing for men.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're not that's Terry. That's what I was trying to tell you. Before you cut on my son, you got to kill me. I'm sorry.
You
ain't cutting on my son. I don't care what no judge say. I don't care what no DSFS say. I don't care what family members say. You're not cutting on my son. It ain't happening. I don't care. I don't care what DCFS says. You're not gonna castrate my son. And I don't care what he says. I don't care if he say he want to be a woman. Now, when you have a son that say he wants to be a woman, something else went wrong in his life, obviously, right? None of my sons talking about no woman stuff, please. But you're not gonna cut on my son. You're not gonna cut on my daughter. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
But cowards. Most people are cowards. Let's just be honest. Even in the church, most people are cowards. And this evil like this can prosper because people fall in line.
Exactly.
Right.
And we've seen example after example after example of that. I mean, COVID was a giant example.
Yep.
Gigantic example.
Yep.
It
Sure
still
was.
is, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
And yeah, there's just so many examples of that. Looking the other way.
Yep. Looking the other way. And for people, the scary part about that is people that don't have enough courage and they've made their feelings their God, particularly the emotion of fear. There's a verse, Matthew 7. Many on that day shall say, Lord, Lord. And I will say, I never knew you.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew you. And it's these people stick their heads in the sand and think that as long as I try to be as morally pure as I can, then I'm all right with God. That's a lie. That's a lie. Read The Watchman on the Wall. If you see evil and you continue to close your mouth to it and you don't deal with it, the Watchman on the Wall concept,
right?
You're done. You're done. You're done. But this whole moral thing, somehow if I could be just, I don't.
But that's part of being moral.
They don't see it that way, because you got these in our northwest suburbs. You've got these plaques. Love always.
Oh yeah.
See, that's the type.
Love
that's
everyone.
the fun. Is that what it is? Love everyone always. See, that's the mark of moral of spirituality. Love everyone always.
Gosh.
And how many people sit in those pews?
And what's their definition of love?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Except everybody. Except everything.
Except everything.
Everything and everybody. Yes. But most people are cowards. Most people are cowards. So, but anyway, I'm done, Vicky.
Yep, that's all I had. That's all I had. So, hopefully people will. This will open up a few more eyes, little by little.
It's evil.
It is evil.
It's just flat out evil.
No question.
It's just evil. It's just evil. Terry, anything else?
No, I think I said enough.
Evil. All right. Thank you all for looking into the deep, dark recesses of evil with us tonight. But then turn to Christ. His light will shine, everything else. All right. Thank you all. God bless. Till next time.
For such a time as this,